The English University Library's book donations department has a problem. Their operations have grown at an unsustainable rate, with donated books piling up, unable to be processed due to their lack of manpower. My name is Andrew Hers, and in this presentation I will present a concise, sound argument in support of the library's request for a budget increase of $5,000 per year. On the next slide, you will find the main issue at hand. The Budget Committee has declined the request for a $5,000 increase to the annual budget of the Library Book Donations Department, basing their decision on a cost analysis that has yielded incorrect information. Therefore, it is necessary to reevaluate the financial situation of the department and to correct the statements made by the committee. On the following slide, we will begin our cost analysis. Costs associated with the Book Donations Department include the librarian's salary allocation of $12,000, graduate assistant stipend of $5,200, facility allocation costs of $1,200, which would yield a per book cost of $18.40 based on 1,000 books per year. The RFID tag cost per book would be 50 cents. All of these costs listed above are fixed with the exception of the RFID tags, which are variable. The fixed costs are classified as such because they do not change in response to changes in activity volume, whereas the RFID tags do change the costs in response to the activity volume. Understanding the different nature of these costs is key to identifying the errors made in the Budget Committee's calculations, which we will now examine on the following slide. The Budget Committee made these statements using cost data. The calculation of this data will be examined here. The first statement they made was that the unit cost prior to the increase in funds is $18.90, which is correct. The cost used to calculate the total cost per unit in this statement were accurate department costs, and the calculations yielded accurate user data. On the next slide, we'll illustrate the second statement made by the Budget Committee, that increasing the annual budget by $5,000 as requested would result in the cost of each book increasing to $23.90. Denying the increase in funds based on this assertion. There's one important error in these calculations, however. When the total cost per unit of $23.90 was arrived at, it was based on 1,000 book donations processed per year. The author of these figures failed to consider that the increase in funds would increase the department's book total to roughly 1,900, not 1,000. Due to this miscalculation, the total unit cost of $23.90 is faulty, and accounting for the increase in volume brings the total cost per unit from $18.90 to $12.82. The department will thus be able to receive and process each donated book at a lower cost per unit than it currently does, at almost half the cost of the incorrectly calculated $23.90. The third statement is examined on the following slide. The Budget Committee asserts that accepting 2,000 books per year would cost the university $37,800, and that if the donations department were eliminated entirely, it would save the university a minimum of $23,900 annually. The computations used when making this decision are incorrect. The author of these calculations assumed that if the department were to accept 2,000 books, each would be processed at the current cost per unit of $18.90, the current cost. A more realistic projection is that if the donations department were granted the additional funds they requested, and were therefore able to handle a volume close to 2,000 as is being calculated, the total fixed cost would equal $23,400, variable cost would be $1,000, 50 cents for 2,000 books, and total cost per unit would drop to $12.20. This would bring the cost to the university from the assumed $37,800 to $24,400. Furthermore, it's inaccurate to assume that these costs would be turned to pure savings if the donation department's operations were discontinued. We will conclude this presentation on the following slide. Based on my revised cost analysis of the book donation department's operations, I believe they should be granted the requested increase in annual funds of $5,000. On the surface, the increase in funds will not only allow the department to operate at a much lower unit cost per book, it will also allow them to process more books per year, offering a better service to the students of the university. But the benefits go beyond the scope of this initial analysis. It's mentioned in the case that the university's library donation department has played a large role in the increase in the university's visibility and enrollment numbers. If the Budget Committee were to cut funding or shut down the donation department altogether, they run the risk of losing the revenue and losing the interest of these students, leading to decreased enrollment and less tuition being brought in. Unfortunately, exact figures are not provided in this case, but given the average tuition paid by a modern graduate student, it's clear that the donation department pays for itself many times over by attracting these scholars. I implore the Budget Committee to reflect on these facts and to reconsider their initial decision regarding the donation department's funding request. Thank you.